Hey there, folks. Jason from Blue Label Bastards Wargaming again. And I realize it's been quite some time since I've done any kind of hobby channel update. Never mind a bat rep. It's been some time. I'm now living back in Northern Virginia. And while I posted 2 or 3 bat reps since I've been back, I've really kind of hit or I had hit a kind of a major funk in the hobby. I had a really good gaming group when I was in Vienna, Austria previously. Guys who were of like mind when it came to why we play the game, why we spend so much time. We were not win at all cost players. We were there to have fun with each other, throw back a couple beverages, shoot the breeze a bit. Basically just good friends out having a good time. And not to say that the people I've played with here haven't been of that similar mindset, but kind of a host of things were building up, some having to do with wargaming, some having to do just with, change in circumstances, change of location, that kind of prompted me to relook at wargaming and how I spend my free time. And I want to talk about those things a little bit because it's going to have some impacts on the future of the channel. So, maybe it's more important to talk about why I got into wargaming, what I like about it. I've been wargaming on and off since 2010, I think? 2010. So not a long time at all. And primarily been Games Workshop related games. Primarily Warhammer Fantasy. Excuse me. I've done other stuff. I played a lot of historicals. I played a little bit of Infinity. Really liked it. But I decided early on that I wanted to kind of invest more in a game that I enjoyed, that I could kind of get excited about, and then I knew I would be able to find players. I didn't play as much before I went to Vienna, and just got lucky and found a group of guys that I played with separately. Sometimes I'd play with together, and we just gelled really well. I'm a big fan of having fully painted armies, and I like to do theme lists, and I like campaigns. I like narrative style. Some might kind of dismissively call it I don't say the role-playing aspect of it. And even I think fluff is somewhat a derogatory term. To me, kind of the win at all costs, trading the squeeze, the efficiency out of every single point in an army list, that's the fluff stuff. The important stuff for me is, it's not that I don't like winning, believe me, I like winning. But it's to be able to have a list. You can look across the table at your opponent and say, well, you put some time thinking about your list. There's a theme behind it. You're not just kind of min-maxing. Because my time is limited. Your time is limited. Everybody's time is limited, particularly as you get older. My son is now 7 going on 8. My wife and I both work full-time. We both have other hobbies that we pursue. So my time has shrunk. I did have a lot more free time when I was in Austria, just because I lived very close to where I worked, and public transportation was great, and my wife wasn't working full-time, and now she is, so we have to divide up kind of childcare more, and my son's getting more active, and, I'm not going to give you the sob story because I love my life, but that just means there's a more limited amount of time for wargaming, and so the opportunities that I had to play were that much more important. Like if I was going to invest time in playing, taking time away from my family, borrowing and stealing some time but from my wife, who, to be fair, has been very, for the most part, open about letting me, go have fun with people to toy soldiers. But since I came back, I haven't found a gaming group that I can really gel with. I found a good group of guys at a local, friendly local gaming store not too far away from me that play Warhammer every Tuesday. And I think had I stuck with it, I would have I may not have been in this place, but let me talk a little bit more about, so there's the kind of my current work-life balance thing that I'm working through. But then also there's the game. And as I've mentioned, as you've seen in this show, if you've been watching it or this channel, I'm primarily a Warhammer Fantasy player. I spent a lot of time on my Warriors of Chaos. I did start with some Bretonnians once, and I picked up a bunch of other armies that, Chaos Dwarves and other things. I like the one-off stuff. I like to be able to build, what looks cool, what's a little different. And I think what exemplifies this most is this model. It's probably one of the ones I'm most proud of. It shows up here. So this is Kolek. I did a video on this model, where I got it from, a place in China. I took it out of the Warhammer Warriors of Chaos book. It's a special character that GW doesn't make a model for. I was really pleased with how this came out. So I built a Kolek themed list. Kind of I'm going to call it a mountain theme list, but I was working toward that. So I had that. I had Kolek with 2 Shaggoths, a bunch of Warhounds, 6 Dragon Ogres. What else does that list have? Chimera, stood in by my Manticore. And that might be it. No magic users. I wanted a non-human list, because I'm not a huge fan of the mark kind of side of the Warriors of Chaos. And my plan was to have a horde of trolls. So to have a very mountain theme list. And I have to remember, sorry to look at the camera here. I'm trying this on my iPad. So if I look away, I'm not being antisocial. So I came in, and particularly with the Warriors of Chaos book, everybody knows that if you really want to play if you want to play hardcore, heavy chariot list, the Nurgle Demon Prince, the Unkillable, 2-up, 3-up, rerollable, Tzeentch Lord, Sorcerer, BSB, whatever, there's plenty of ways to do it in Warrior Chaos. I'm there to have fun myself, I'm there to have fun with my opponent, that's just not my playstyle. And I found that, and maybe, again, I think maybe that my experience in Vienna was the aberration, or the exception rather than the rule, but folks that I played with here, great gamers, good guys, never had a bad game, but it was much more of a less beer and pretzels, more by the book. Not min-maxing, but taking full advantage of your army book. And as a guy who's coming in with no BSB, I've got a nicely painted war shrine, had my Khorne theme list. That's not an easy one to play. So I got crushed pretty badly. And again, it's not because I'm going to take my ball and go home because I didn't win. But if I have a limited amount of time, and the game is, if I'm going to get crushed every time, so I can either change my play style and go a bit more hardcore, and that's why I decided, actually, that's kind of what convinced me. I'm like, okay, if I do the Troll Horde, if I do the Throg list, okay, that's still mounting, it's still within my theme, but that's a tough nut for people to crack, and that's how you fill your core requirement. You don't have to have any humans. Or I could model like a giant troll model and really be a chaos, sorcerer lord on disc or whatever. You could play with it that way. But I was going to have to spend a lot of time, and I just was getting less and less excited about it. And then, and I may have talked about this in the past, but so on top of the limited amount of free time, the difficulty finding my groove, I guess, wargaming wise, and not wanting to change my play style too much because I'm a campaign theme player. Again, and it was always a pickup game every Tuesday. You may or may not know who you're going to play with. I didn't develop kind of that small group of guys that we could try a campaign or whatever. It just didn't materialize. I'm not to say that it never will, but it didn't when I was there. Then there's all the swirl going on about Warhammer Fantasy. prompted primarily by this. So I picked up this book, Nagash, and obviously everybody out there is aware of what's going on, the 50% Lords, the future of Warhammer Fantasy, you know, what are they going to do in 9th edition, and part of it is like, don't worry about it, excuse me, you know, don't get so stressed about it, but I would find that I would, because I had put so much time in things, particularly the Bretonnians. I really like the Bretonnians, they're a bit of a one-trick pony right now, but I don't want to spend my limited free time on a game that in a year I might not be able to play with the models. One of the great things about Games Workshop, for me at least, is the fact that you can go to pretty much any major town, any major city, and go to a store, and somebody there will be playing Warhammer Fantasy, or mostly 40k. I have a 40k Imperial Fist army. Got so fed up with playing yellow. But I can guarantee I could find a game with my Imperial Fists. Odds are pretty good that I can find a game with my Warriors of Chaos or my Bretonnians. But still, I don't like playing with the mound of gray plastic. So if I'm going to commit to painting 18 trolls and basing them and making it look right at my kind of very slow painting speed, I want to make sure that I'm going to have an army to play with when I'm done. And I'm going to enjoy playing. So I finally got around to getting all the bases done. I ended up using Mantic Ogres, because I wasn't going to spend anywhere near as much as GW wanted for troll models. I didn't want them to all be the single pose guys. So I've got all the models around. I just could not get excited about putting stuff together. And for a while, especially when I was in Vienna, I was modeling and painting at a pretty good clip for me. That Kolek model, I'm really proud of. I got an airbrush, was playing around with that. You know, it's not like I never got off the ground with my army at all. It's pretty much mostly painted. The warriors are pretty well done. But I don't want to invest any more time in something that I don't know what direction it's going to go in. I've only ever played Warhammer Fantasy for 8th edition. And it's not bad. Am I a big fan of the magic stuff? No. And I don't like how it takes some of the generalship away, I think, to just 6 dice something. Be like, you know, you're gonna lose. And I'm not saying that Warhammer Fantasy isn't a game for good generals. It's just that there's some things where you can't account for. I guess maybe what I want out of things is changing. I said I'm more of a background, a backstory. I want to have a reason for having an army, not just because of the best choices in the army book. So what has that led me toward? And then the pricing for Warhammer stuff is, Games Workshop stuff's getting a bit out of control. And we had a bit more disposable income when I was in Vienna. I don't have that anymore. So, again, if I've got limited time, limited money, I'm more certain about what I want out of a gaming group. And I guess those two things. I don't know why I told my fourth finger. And I'm not pleased about the direction Warhammer's going, to the point where I got anxious about what's going to happen in Warhammer Fantasy. That's my thing. The more I thought about it, the more I started to realize that maybe it's time to find a new thing that really kind of, I'm more inclined to find players that are of a similar mindset. And this is not to denigrate Warhammer Fantasy. I still really like Warhammer Fantasy. I think it's a great game. I think it has a tremendous amount of potential and opportunities. It's just not, I haven't found kind of that group, that environment that lets me play Warhammer Fantasy the way I want to play. Next week I could find it. Odds are probably I won't, but I'm not walking away from Warhammer Fantasy at all. So, because my work kind of focuses on research and historical things, and that happens to be where my interest is in terms of military history, I decided to go a bit of a different direction, and thus this channel, at least a good chunk of it, will be going a different direction too. So I started to look around at some other alternatives. I don't want to do War Machine. That's kind of the opposite end of where I want to go. That seems to be more, I don't want to say min-maxing, and please don't everybody thumbs down this if anybody watches this video. Definitely is a bit of a ramble at this point. that wasn't the direction I wanted to go. X-Wing or Star Trek just didn't really get me excited about stuff. I'm not much for a skirmishy kind of game. There's plenty of other stuff out there, because I was hoping to find something that had a decent background or a reasonable amount opportunity to play, to find other players that would play along. While at the same time, even if I don't, I am excited about, or there's other things I can delve into when I'm making an army, even if it just sits on my shelf somewhere or back there. I've got something when I'm done that I could talk about a backstory and then dust it off eventually if I do find a group. With Warhammer Fantasy, I didn't feel that connection with the army. It's not like I painted this troll because he's got this backstory. There wasn't like the research side. You could build the fluff yourself, but I didn't feel like it was quite the same. So I did a bit of searching, and I decided to pick up 2 new gaming systems that are related. And when I was looking around, I wanted to find a game designers company that has a similar attitude to mine. Not like some of the Napoleonic games where it takes you like 5 hours just to set up the game, and then it's like a full weekend to like conduct a movement. That is not my thing. Or if your uniform is the wrong tint of gray or whatever, not my speed at all. I wanted a little bit of that. I didn't want to have pink knights running around or anything, but I didn't want to get too hard up. And so those of you who follow the wargaming scene are probably well familiar with Warlord Games. Warlord Games has a series of games that they have out. One of which is Hail Caesar, which is kind of an ancient game. There's Pike and Shot, which is medieval up to like the 18th century. Maybe. Oh, they've got the 19th century too, because there's Napoleonics in there. Then they have Bolt Action, which is World War II. And then they have some other games too. I'm not denigrating those. But the 2 that really kind of got me excited, and what you're going to see more and more of on this channel, I'll start off with one that got me hooked the most. Hail Caesar. So Hail Caesar is a rule set that you can go the whole way back to William the Conqueror, the Egyptians, the Greeks, the Spartans, the Persians, or what I've decided to do, the Romans. Why did you pick this, you say? Or you might be asking. Again, it's the research side. It's you can build a legion, or more likely a cohort of an early Imperial Roman legion, and you can have themed games. What's nice about this one is there isn't points normally associated with the list. It's an opportunity to refight an old battle, or if you can find a good player to play with. It's more like, well, back in the day they had this many units of this, and this many units of auxiliaries, and you had slingers and cavalry, and on the other side you had the Gauls, or the Celts, or the Germanians, and they would fight like this. And you just have a good time playing a game. That's kind of what I'm looking for. I really like getting books like this, and I'll talk about some of these more in the future, where you can go through and like, okay, well that's kind of what they should look like, right? You can look at tactics and how they would have fought before, and it's almost kind of like the role-playing aspect. Look over here at the camera. The role-playing aspect of wargaming that I like, because like when I would play my Khorne Viking themed list, there were times when I was being a general that I knew was a bad decision, but I wanted to play it like, well, that's how the drooling, foaming at the mouth, blood-covered Reaver would fight. Of course he was going to charge after those guys. It may not be the best general decision to do it, but that's what the guy I was playing would do. That's how I like playing wargaming. Kind of getting in the heads of the people that you're doing. How would they have fought? And it's a lot easier to do that with historicals, I think, potentially, than it is for Warhammer Fantasy. That's the stuff I liked. It's getting into books like this, going through and, okay, well, that's what some of these guys used to look like. This is how they used to fight. Freaking elephants. Who wouldn't want an elephant in their army? You can go full on Pelennor Fields, Lord of the Rings. The other nice thing about the rule set, it's very simple. It's very fast. It's kind of how, because Rick Priestley and Alessio Cavatore developed it, it's a lot of Warhammer Ancient Battles. It's much more simplistic than Warhammer Fantasy. The game tends to happen a lot more quickly, and the models also tend to be cheaper. And I'll get more into how I'm going to address this on the channel, but it's a lot easier on the pocketbook to get started. You can build as huge of an army as you want, but reasonable. And the also thing is it can be run at like 15 millimeters or even smaller, but Warlord Games has a nice range of affordable 28 millimeter stuff, which is what I'm used to building. And I could take those armies and use it someplace else if I wanted to. Warhammer Ancient Battles, because a lot of people still play that kind of on the underground scene. So that's one of the two games I decided to look into because of it is the epitome for me of excuse me, of kind of the beer and pretzels, have fun. You can be serious about it and really kind of nerd out about what you would do as the commander. Build scenarios, fight a battle, find an opponent who is of the same mindset, and just have fun wargaming. So that's kind of the two games, that is, I think, the truest expression of what I like in wargaming. The other one I decided to go with was this one, Bolt Action. Obviously, World War II is really big right now. I wasn't really a fan of Flames of War of the scale. I tend to like big battles, which is why Hail Caesar, you can represent an entire legion of 5,000 troops on the field. This one is much more basically squad / company based. World War II, I've always kind of been a military history nerd. I've got my educational background is in that, and it's really popular right now. So the problem with Hail Caesar, I've already found that it's tougher to find people in my area that play it. That's going to be one of those ones where I think that'll be like the longer term project. This one has a really big following right now. World War II is big. Or a bigger following. It's not on the Games Workshop level in my area, but it's definitely big. I've decided to do a German list, which still gives me pause because I'm afraid people are going to think that I secretly am, goose-stepping around the house and whatever. I always seem to like to play the bad guys, I think, in a lot of war games. If you pick one in World War II, it's a tie between them and the Japanese. Probably the Russians are up there too. But I've always liked German armor, and so that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to Armies of Germany, do a mid to late war Panzer Grenadier list. Again, I'll talk about that more. But then you can also play Tank War and have a tank platoon, a tank company. Again, it's 28 millimeter scale, even though the tanks are a bit too small for that. And again, it's another Rick Priestley, Alessio Cavatore game, so it's very simple. It's a lot like, my understanding is what Warhammer 40k used to be in like 2nd edition, before it got so complicated and got run over with rules. And I think it's tough to do, from what I've seen, this list, if you look down the spectrum of like wargamer nerdiness fluff on this end, Hail Caesar would be down here, 40k is over here, Bolt Action's a bit more in the middle somewhere. You have to pick a country. Normally you're pretty set on lists, but you're not going to mix like, I'm going to pick the best of the Japanese and the best of the Germans and the best of the Americans and make a army list out of it. that, and I think the people that tend to play it are a bit more, because it's historical, they're going to kind of be more inclined. There's a lot more tournaments. You can't really do a tournament with a Hail Caesar game, I don't think. It's tougher. There are Army List books out there, but you're not going to find that. There are bolt action tournaments. I'm not really a tournament kind of guy, unless it's a very friendly tournament. But there are tournaments out there. But this one is a pointed game, so that each unit has points. But what I've seen on the internet and listening to podcasts and watching videos, folks aren't quite as willing to put up with power gaming, unless you're at a tournament. Like the pickup games, you won't see that as much. Is my hope. That's my inclination that I've gotten so far. So what this allows me to do is kind of what I did with my Warhammer Fantasy Army. I can actually go through and pick a unit and be like, okay, this is them right after Kursk, and they're trying to stem the tide in the east. Or if I want to build it like, this is the Atlantic Wall defense. Go through things like this, and like, I've got a Tiger tank. Who doesn't like Tiger tanks? They're awesome. And find a proper paint scheme and try to emulate it the best that I can with my painting skills. Panzer 3 and 4. Go through. Here's actual pictures of what they used to look like and how the Germans used to paint them up. It's a good challenge to try to duplicate that. I'd love to be able to do that paint scheme on my 28mm Tiger. So it kind of scratches my itch on the hobby side with the painting. It's a challenge. You can't just throw paint on something. You could, but you have to be a little bit more precise in the way that I want to play. So, and to get at some of the cost issues, so here's a box of German late war infantry. You get 25 models in here with all kinds of different options. What was the price of this? So this was $38. $38. This is about enough, depending on how you played your game. 1, maybe 2 boxes of this would be all of the troops you would need. It depends on what kind of list you want to build. But that's really kind of all you need, depending on the point levels. But how most people seem to play. This, my Tiger, it's resin. It's a good cast. Again, I'll review it. It's $40. Odds are, like, Tigers aren't that good in the game because bolt action tends to be an infantry-heavy game. It's much more tactical, squad-level, platoon-level kind of thing. This is $40. You can find cheaper ones on the internet. But again, unless you're going to play tank war, you need like one of these. And that's it. So it's much cheaper to buy an army and play it. And the models are good. Are they GW good? Probably not. I don't think anybody can really match GW, particularly in plastics. But they're good. They're good enough for me, at least. So, when I talked earlier about why, I have limited time, I haven't found a gaming group that I want, which is not having as much fun in the game, and I'm concerned about the future of Warhammer Fantasy. I don't really have much to say. I'm not that excited about 40K. Because I haven't found a group for either side, and there's just so much vitriol on the internet. Whenever there's angst and power gaming, and just go on some of the websites, you're like, dude, get a life. Go have fun. Life's too short to worry about wargaming so much. Warlord games, or what these Warlord games, they seem to allow me to do is, I can do it at my own pace. Although I think the bolt action stuff will probably take the lead because I have a better line of getting more games. It's cheaper. Folks out there seem to be much more relaxed and encouraging versus kind of this negativity. Warlord Games is much smaller than Games Workshop, so you're not going to have one of these things. I mean, Games Workshop, to their credit, has been putting out a tremendous amount of content, but it gets to the point where, I forget how much I spent on this. I'm probably going to be selling it or giving it to a friend of mine here pretty soon. But, there seems to be this push to try to spend all this money to try to keep up, and I didn't want to do it anymore. I don't want to have giant models. I don't want to spend 50% points on Lord models and just do magic everywhere, and it ends up not being a lot of fun. I think that Warlord games, particularly Hail Caesar, it's more... They both strike me in their own ways as being more reflective of actual combat. So both games have variations of... One is it's a random draw of a die to see who gets activations, and Hail Caesar, if you want to give an order, your units have to test before they're going to do it. Particularly in ancient times, people just may not want to. Like, hell no, I'm not going to charge that elite unit. I'm just a peasant bowman. That's one of the things that always kind of drove me nuts about Warhammer Fantasy is if a general said to do it, they're going to do it. Which is not reflective of reality at all. You could have, in Hail Caesar, you can have command failures where the units just do the wrong thing or they won't do what you want. I think that's a lot more reflective. And then how do you adapt to that? That's a lot more reflective of how combat actually is, with the fog of war and friction and all the other Clausewitzian terms you want to throw in there. And I think it challenges you more as a wargaming general. So those are all the things I'm going to, or those are all the reasons why I'm going to be transitioning away from Warhammer Fantasy. I'm not getting rid of anything, but I'm not going to be looking for games as much. Unless I develop a gaming group or fall into a gaming group and we want to try to move things around. Because I have to be excited about spending my precious time on painting stuff. I'm going to paint stuff that I'm excited about, and then I have a good chance of playing with. So for the channel, this means there's going to be a lot less Warhammer Fantasy and a lot more Warlord game stuff. And my goal is to try to do one video per week each on Hail Caesar and Bolt Action. In the beginning, that's going to be talking primarily about a little bit of the backgrounds, or how do you find backgrounds in your armies, some of the books that I found, and then doing some of the kit reviews, because there isn't really a whole lot out there on YouTube land. Templar's Crusade does a lot of things. His is primarily Bolt Action, and he's a better model than I am and has a huge network. I appreciate all 86 or so of my subscribers at this point, November 29th or 30th, whatever day it is. That doesn't match others. As I get gaming groups, I'm going to try to do some bat reps, but that's probably going to be a little ways off when I have to paint up my models to Hail Caesar. I think it's tough. It's going to be tough to find a game. But essentially, I'll kind of try to walk people through the hobby, and there might be some of you out there who are in a similar situation to mine, where it's harder for you to commit to... It's harder for you to commit your limited free time on something that doesn't make you happy anymore. And Warhammer Fantasy doesn't really make me happy. If I had a strong gaming group, it might be a different story. But, you go on Warseer or Fayette or whatever, and you're just like, Jesus, simmer down. It's, and maybe there is going to be all this drama where GW fundamentally changes Warhammer Fantasy into something I don't like. Could change to something I really like, where there's more generalship. They go the Rick Priestley route, the way it used to be. And I'm not old enough, and I haven't been gaming long enough to be kind of Codgery or Grognard or, neckbeard, even shaved, but, I'm not going to be that guy. If people want to play that and have fun, I'm all about people having fun. It's just not the way I have fun anymore. So, from this point forward, this has been a ridiculously long ramble. I always run long. Like I said, 2 videos per week. I hope they may be shorter, they may be longer, both on the hobbying side, painting, looking at some of the kits, talking about army lists, talking about research, and maybe getting some games in. We'll see how long I can keep that up, and we'll also see kind of what kind of feedback I get from others. Obviously, most of you who are subscribing watch or do so because of Warhammer Fantasy, and I hope this doesn't turn you off to my channel, but if it does, then so be it. But, this might be an opportunity for you to kind of reconsider, if you're inclined, and look at how another gaming system plays. Because I think the people that do Games Workshop and all the great things about Games Workshop, I actually own a little bit of stock in Games Workshop, actual stock, because for all of their failings, I believe they're a great company because they are the the entry point for most people that don't have a wargaming background. My dad never did wargaming. They have a very important purpose. You can go in any store and you know what you're going to get. There's a lot of friendly local gaming stores where you got the crotchety, overweight guy who is reading his sci-fi book and couldn't give a shit about what you're looking at, or looking for, or hobbying advice, or teaching you how to dry brush. I didn't know any of those things. Games Workshop did that. So I'm not a Games Workshop hater. I think their price point is above really where I want to go right now, but their games are reasonable, and you know you're going to be able to find a game. You know you're going to be able to, in any town, be able to find somebody, odds are, who plays probably 40K or fantasy. Part of what I will try to track on this channel is how do you go about finding a gaming group for some of these less popular games. You know, kind of the third tier games maybe, because the second tier I'd put like, the first tier, you know, people can argue about who has bigger market share. First tier is Games Workshop. In terms of finding a game anywhere, Games Workshop. Second tier, I would put like War Machine, X-Wing, Flames of War, and there's always kind of historicals in the background somewhere, like historicals, like the hardcore guys, Napoleonic guys. I don't know kind of where they fit in, but for more accessible war games, there's like a second tier. Warlords probably, Hail Caesar's probably third tier-ish. Bolt Action's third tier, maybe getting into second. And it varies greatly. So part of this is going to be my documenting how I go about trying to integrate myself or find a gaming group for the less, where it's a little bit harder, I guess. Like I said, the guys that I played with here, Warhammer Fantasy, great guys, just wasn't really doing it for what I was looking for. So let's see if I can kind of replicate that, and by scoping the gaming system and finding one that more embodies what I'm interested in, will I be more likely to find gamers of a similar mindset to me. So that's going to be it. This is a long ramble. This is a typical long ramble of mine. So bottom line, changes to the channel, less Games Workshop, less Warhammer Fantasy, more Warlord games, and hobbying, and army lists, and research stuff along those lines. Whether you decide to stay with the channel or not, I wish you all the best of luck. Again, most of you are here for my wargaming stuff. Go out and wargame. Wargame is one of the best hobbies I've found on a host of fronts. It's not as expensive as a lot of others. It allows you to do some research. It works both sides of your brain. It's a good way to go out and meet people. Sometimes the people you meet are a little strange, but it's better than some of those isolated hobbies. And you have something when you're done that you can genuinely be proud of, if you're a halfway decent painter, or if you think you're a halfway decent painter. And just avoid the drama that primarily goes along with GW or GW versus War Machine, Bravature Press. You know, ignore some of that stuff. And that's what I'm kind of looking forward to doing, is kind of disengaging. I already have done so a lot. Disengaging from the Games Workshop. Not Games Workshop itself, but all the drama that goes with it. That, you know, internet trolls seem to always drum up. And just enjoy the game. So, but, you know, I wish you guys, and girls, although I don't think I've had a girl yet on my channel, I wish you guys all the best. I hope you stick with me. If you don't, I understand, but it's kind of freeing once you kind of are willing to step back from the Games Workshop thing a little bit. But who knows, I could be back with Warhammer Fantasy at some point in the future, but for right now it's going to be all Warlord all the time. So, I wish you guys the best, and, you know, particularly upcoming holidays, you know, whatever you celebrate, Happy New Year, and keep on wargaming, I guess. May your dice always be hot. Alright, take it easy, gents.